Hi, my name is Solace Ames, and I'd like to start doing little videos. So this is my very first one. It's going to be a little bit rough around the edges, but I wanted to start off talking about something very challenging, and I don't know, maybe we'll go into more challenging subjects from this one, but I wanted to talk about sex work. And I am a former sex worker. I worked as a cocktail waitress in a strip club in Manhattan in the 90s. I didn't do it for very long, I did it for less than a year. And sometimes I wonder whether or not to call myself a sex worker, but sex work is not just it's a huge range of activities, and in as much as we were at the club selling a certain kind of quasi-sexual content, and I did sometimes dance for money. There was a little bit of a thin line between strippers and cocktail waitresses sometimes, and we wore very revealing uniforms, let's just say that. There was an ass cape. It was kind of like a cape, but it was for your ass, so I called it an ass cape. So my experience is there, and I think that my experiences are very representative of the vast majority of women that work in sex work or work in the sex industry. And there's a lot of stigma involved. There is more money than you could get in other fields, and I really needed money at the time for my education, for my future, and it was a good fit for me at the time. I'm very glad I didn't stay there longer than I did, because I found myself getting very cynical about human relations, about men, about I just started looking at people in very sexually commodified ways, and it was uncomfortable, and I didn't like it. And I think, but that's not something that's unique to sex work. I think it's inherent in any field that involves performance and selling a persona, physical features, acting, so on. So my experience was not great. It was not bad. It was in the middle. I was harassed a lot, but I worked in the restaurant industry, and I was harassed even more there. At least in strip clubs, there were bouncers who strictly enforced certain codes of conduct. I've heard things are a little bit different now, because when I worked, the working conditions in those clubs were probably better than they are nowadays, and the customers could sort of get away with demanding less. So I worked there, I got my money, I left, and for a long time I didn't tell anybody, and that is very common. A lot of times you will see sex work represented by people who either had a very bad experience, who were exploited, sexually abused, even enslaved, or by people who went into it to get something positive out of it and found it empowering. And I just think that that's a little bit problematic if you're looking from the outside and those are the only two kinds of people you're listening to, because most of the people, and I really believe this, I could look up studies on this too probably, but it would be so hard because so many people don't talk about it. They'll work in a sex industry field for a few months, maybe a few years. They'll get out and they'll just never talk about it. Because there's so much stigma. I mean, I probably would not talk about this under my real name. My name is Solace Ames. I use a pen name, like many people in my field. But it's one thing that I've sort of challenged myself to be a little bit more open about, in order to look at some of the stigma around this and, sort of remove it a little bit, so that, not so that I could tell everybody, oh, sex work is a wonderful thing, everyone should do it. It's not. I think only a very few people should do it who are really, really know what they're getting into, because there's a lot of myths about it, and it can be very, very damaging to your psyche, to your sense of yourself. But at the same time, that's capitalism. There are so many jobs that are out there that will make you feel like crap and traumatize you. And if I had the choice over again to work in a restaurant where I was, say, waitressing and constantly sexually and racially harassed, and coming home at the end of the night with $80 versus working in the strip club and coming home with 150 and dealing with slightly less harassment, I would probably make the same choice I made over again. So you have to look at these things in perspective. And like I said, it's something I've challenged myself to talk more about, and I probably will talk more about it. So if you have any questions, just hit me up. Until next time, bye-bye.